Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to Playwright with Java sessions. So this is our session 2. In this video, we're going to discuss about how to interact with various input elements. In our previous lecture, we did look into how to create a Playwright test case, right? In our previous session, we did look into how to create a Playwright test case, how to instantiate a browser, how to create a page, and what is a browser context, and how to navigate and how to do a simple login scenario. Now in this session, we're going to look into a lot more into input, different type of inputs, and how to handle inputs, how to enter data into input. And there's a difference between, there are two types of methods, fill and type. And what's the difference between fill and type? And how to get the value from the input, and how to check whether the input is enabled or whether it is disabled or not. So without any further ado, let's jump into the code. So today I'm gonna take this simple website called letcode.in. So this is very good website for practice purpose. And here, so this is letcode.in, and from this website, click on explore workspace, and there are a lot of elements here. You can practice all these elements. Now here I'm gonna explain all the things which are present inside the input page. Yes. So let's simulate all these things. And let's learn how to handle inputs in Playwright. Okay, if you see here in this page, here first we have to enter our full name, and in the second field, here we have to append the text at the end of the text that is already present inside the field. And then in the third thing, we have to grab the data that is present inside the text box. And inside the one from the fourth field, we have to clear it. And from the fifth field, we have to check whether it is editable or not, or whether it is whether it is disabled or not. And from the sixth field, we have to check whether it is editable or not. So first, let's get back to our code. So these are previous tests. Let's create a new class here. Right click and let's quickly create a class. And I'll be naming it input test. Now here I will be creating a main method. Now inside main method, our first task is to create a Playwright instance. Playwright is equal to playwright.create. Okay. And then finally we have to close the Playwright. So we have to start the Playwright engine, and then we have to close the Playwright engine. And then using Playwright object, we can instantiate whatever browser we want. So here I'm gonna test it in Chrome. So chromium.launch. Now here, this line is going to invoke Chromium browser, but we would like to test it in specific to Chrome browser. Then we can specify all the launch options inside launch method. So either we can specify here, or we can create launch options here as well. Let's create a launch options, and let me name it launch options. So got a new launch options, right? And here you can chain many methods here. So we have something called a set headless. For time being, let's keep it false because we want the browser to be invoked. And then let's set the channel as well. And here let's set it to Chrome. Now this is my launch options object. Now let's pass this launch object to this launch method. Launch options. So that is how I can specify the launch options to my browser. And then this playwright.chromium.launch is going to give us a browser instance. So let me name it browser. And let's resolve the variable. So it is giving us the browser variable. And then using the browser, you can create a context. So let me create a new context here. And let me name it as a context. So creating the context, we have to create a new page out of this context. A new page. So we can create a new page out of this context and let's name it as page. And let's resolve this variable. It's going to return as page. And finally, we did create a page. And what is the first one? First and foremost, we have to navigate. We have to navigate to the respective page. And if we get back to our application, so these are application directly. I'm navigating to this page. So let us grab the URL here. Then after navigating to the web page, our first and foremost task is to enter the full name inside this locator, inside this first input field. So let us inspect the first input field. So when we inspect the first input field, we could see it is having an ID called full name. Let us copy this and let us check whether it is unique or not. Yes, we can find this element uniquely on this page. Let's copy this CSS selector and let's get back to our code. Now to identify a locator, we have a method called locator. Okay, and here we can specify the CSS selector directly, and this is going to give us the locator. So let's name it the locator of this field. Let's name it full name. Full name is my locator name, and let's resolve it. Okay. Similarly, let's create a locator for all the fields. Now let's inspect the second field. And now when I inspect the second field, okay, it is also having an ID called join. Copy this and let's paste it here. And let's name it join field. Similarly, altogether we have 6 fields. I want to see, yeah, so we have in total have 6 fields. So let's create 4 more locators and let's refactor them. And let's go to the third field, right? And it is having a text. It is having an ID called as get me. And let's copy it. And let's paste it here. And I would say get me field. And then we have one more text box. It is having an ID called clear me. Let's copy this. And I'm going to name it clear me field. And then we have 2 more fields. It is having an ID called no edit. And then finally we have a text box. Is having an ID called don't write. Let's copy it. Let's paste it here. I'm going to say it as read only field. So in total, I have 6 locators here. So locators are nothing but these are like by classes. So if you remember by class in Selenium, it is similar to by class. It is similar to by class in Selenium. Or you can say by locator in Selenium. We did find all the locators. Now here, the page.locator is just, it's gonna create a locator, but it is not going to identify the element on the page. Okay, now here from line number 17 to line number 21, we are just creating the locator, but we are so locator will not, page.locator will not identify the element. So unless and until when you perform an option or when you perform any operation using this locator, only then the respective action is gonna be triggered and it's gonna find the respective element on the page. And now let's check the first scenario. Now our first scenario is to enter some name into the first field. So our first field is full name. So let's use full name locator dot. When we apply dot, we have a lot of methods here, and let's use fill method. Let's use fill method. If you see, for each and every option, there are two overloaded methods. One is a direct method which takes the value, and we have one more method which takes the value and also takes fill options. But for now, let's pass the value here, and let's pass Playwright Java. So this is how I can enter data into field. Okay, for time being, let's run this code. So before closing this code, let us sleep for a while, and we can sleep using uninterruptible start sleep for a while, sleep uninterruptibly, or here on the page object, we have a method called wait for timeout. We have a method called wait for timeout. So we can use this. So already Playwright is giving us a waiting method. Okay, we need not have to write a sleep method or uninterruptible start sleep uninterruptibly. We can use this method. It is similar to a Java sleep method. Now here page dot wait for timeout, and let's wait for queue. And let's navigate into this page. Wait for timeout. Let's go inside this method. Let's see what it exactly is expecting. So usually wait for timeout in download sources. Yes. If you see here, yes, it is expecting milliseconds. Okay, it is expecting a time in milliseconds. So if you specify one, then it's gonna be 1 millisecond. Or if you specify two, it's gonna be 2 milliseconds. So we need to wait for 2 seconds. Then you have to specify 2000 milliseconds here. So before closing the playwright, I'm waiting for 2 seconds just to show you that our text got filled into the box. Let's run this code. Yes. If you see, it did enter the playwright Java. It did enter the playwright Java into the text box. So this is how we enter a data into a text box in Playwright. Now let's look into the second text box. Now here objective in the second text box is to append a text. Okay, and press keyword tab. I'm going to explain all the keyword actions in another session, but for now, let us append a text here. So there's a text already present inside this field, which is I am good, and we have to append a text here. I'm a good alien. So let's enter a text called alien at end of this code. At the end of this text, that is was already present inside this text locator. So let's use the fill method again. So fill method in the second scenario, I'm going to use a join field. So we did identify the locator for the second input field as well, which is join field. Now upon this join field, let me use a fill method here, and let us send a text called alien. Let's run the code once, and instead of waiting for 2 seconds, let me wait for 6 seconds. Let's run the code again. It's going to trigger the website. Yes, if you observe that it did remove the text that is already present. It did override the text. So fill method, it is not going to append to the text that is already present, rather it is gonna override. So fill method is gonna override. Fill method will override the text. that is already present. So we cannot use fill method in this scenario. So we cannot use fill method in this scenario. And now we have a method called type. Okay. Now we have a method called type. Now using a method called type, we can enter the data into the text fields, but type will not override. It will just append to the text that is already present. So I'm going to use something called as type, and here I'm going to send alien. And let's run the code and let's check whether it's working fine or not. If you observe here, right, now it's going to enter the Playwright Java, and here if you observe, it is appending the text but not at the end but at the starting, because by default cursor is going to be at starting position, so it's going to add text at the starting, but we need text to be append at the end, right? So how to append the text and at the end? Now first we have to keep our cursor at the end, but how to keep our cursor at the end? So before entering or before typing something onto the field, so here I'm going to use a function called as focus. So our focus is going to focus the respective element. Here join field is gonna focus on that respective element, and then there is a method called, let me explain, there's a method called press. So now we can use press to simulate all keyboard actions. Now here, let me show that method called as press. Now inside this press, how to go to, so if I go back to my application, and here if I keep my cursor at the starting position, and if I press control and if I press right arrow, if I press control and the right arrow, you could see that directly I'm going to the uh, ending of the statement or ending of this field. Control plus left arrow. So control plus left arrow is going to take us to the end. Let's get back to our code and let's simulate the same scenario. And here I want to press control plus arrow right. So if you go back to the Playwright docs, let's search for a function called press. Okay. Now here we have a method called, so directly we can use a shortcut like this. If you want to press something like Control Shift plus T, then you can pass text like Control plus Shift plus T. But here we would like to, so if you see there are already examples here, what kind of keys that you can send. Now I would like to simulate Control plus arrow right. So Control plus arrow right. So directly you can type here Control, but please be sure that you're sending the exact text uh, what they have mentioned in the documents. So your control is the C is capital here, control plus, and you would like to send arrow right. So copy this arrow right and paste it here. So this is how you can simulate control plus arrow right. Okay, this is how you can simulate control plus arrow right scenario in Playwright. And then finally my cursor will be at the end of the line, and then I'm typing text called alien. Now let us run this code and let's check whether it's working fine or not. Yes, But if you observe that when I press Control plus right arrow, it is going to the next position. It's going to the next word, but not to the end of the line. But how to simulate how to go to end of the line? If I go back to application, I could press for Alt the right key now, the function the right key now, the control and the right key. So here for time being, here once if you press control plus right key, I'm at hand position and the second and the third. So the total I have to press thrice. Okay, I have to simulate the same line for 3 times. So right now I'm gonna duplicate this line 3 times. Now let us run the code again. If you observe that, it is adding the text at the end of the line. So if you want to give some space, you can add space here before alien. Now it's gonna give some space there. It's gonna have a space, and then it is gonna add a word called alien at the end of the line. Let's take third scenario, and if you find the shortcut instead of right now the control plus arrow right is gonna take it to the next word. But if you find the shortcut for this, then directly you can apply shortcut here. So I did not find the shortcut for time being, so I did include 3 lines of code. So directly you can simulate, or here I can simulate a button called as end. If I press end, it's gonna take. Now how to simulate end? Let us simulate by typing directly end key here. End. Right. Now let's run the code. Yes. If you see here, if you observe, now my end key is working here. So when I press end key, my cursor is moving to the ending position. So I can use end, press end. So here in press, it's gonna take keys. So you're gonna pass keys in a string format. And here, if you come to the third scenario, here from the third text box, we would like to get the text from the text box. But how to get a text from the text box? If you inspect, the third box, here it is having a attribute called value. So here it is having an attribute called value, and you can get value from that. Now let me show you a function called as getAttribute, which is gonna get the attribute value for whatever we want. So right now I want to get the attribute value of attribute called value. How to do that? So here have a third locator, which is a get me field. Now I use get me field tab get attribute. The attribute what I want is called value. Okay, so I'm gonna get the value as a string format, and I'm gonna take it as a value, and let me paste it onto the console. So you can paste on the console, and so we have inbuilt assert functions. So we have inbuilt assert functions in Playwright. So so let's add that assert function here that is imported statically. So we have assert function which is present inside assert package. So com.microsoft.playwright. We have exceptions, and inside exceptions I'm gonna use playwright exceptions, and at the end I'm gonna import assert that. So now I can use assert that function, and inside assert that function it's gonna take the locator. So get me field dot, I can say, so directly I can pass the get me field, which is a locator, and upon this locator I can use a function called as hasAttribute. So there are 4 overloaded methods, but for now I'm gonna stick to has the first one, hasAttribute. I'm gonna check that for attribute value, this is the value. What is the value? Ortholic. So let's paste it here. So for this attribute, this should be the value. That is what I am asserting here. So using getAttribute, you can get the value of that attribute, and using hasAttribute, you can assert the attribute value. Let's run this code quickly and let's check whether this code is working fine or not. It's going to wait for 6 seconds. Right. And if you observe, yes, we got the attribute value of the console. So this is how we get the attribute value in Playwright. Now coming to the fourth scenario, here from the fourth scenario, we would like to clear the text. So before let's get the text before before clearing the input field, and let's get the text after clearing the input field as well. So our field is clear me field, and to get the text that is already present, we have a function called inputValue. So here we have a function called inputValue, which is going to give us the text that is already present in the input field. So let me take it in a, or let's write a statement. Let's write a print statement. Value before clearing the field. Here I would like to this code here. Let us, and let me copy the same code and let me name it value after clearing the field. Okay. Now in between these 2 lines, I'm gonna add clear code. But how to clear a field in Playwright? So here directly, so we don't have any method called clear. So we have a method called fill, and I'm gonna fill it with empty string. So these are we're gonna clear a field in Playwright. So in Selenium we have a clear method. We have a method called clear. This is nothing but fill of empty string is similar to clear method in Selenium. So yeah, we did clear the field, and then we're again getting the text that is already present in the field. So it should be, before clearing the field, it should be Kaushik Chatterjee, and after clearing the field, it should be empty. So let's run the code and let's check it. We did clear the field, and it's gonna wait for 6 seconds because our hard-coded value there. Right. Now if you observe the console output, the value before clearing the field is gonna be the value, and after clearing the field, it's just an empty text. So there is a value that is present inside the text box after clearing it. These are 4 scenarios. Come to the 5th scenario. Now, 5th scenario, here we would like to confirm whether the edit field is disabled or not. How to check that? So we have a, so we will find the locator. The locator is no edit field. Let us use that locator. No edit field dot. Now, on this locator, we have something called as is disabled. We have a method called is disabled. If the element is disabled or the locator is disabled, then it's going to return a true. It's going to return us to let us print it on the console. Is disabled. This is how I can print on the console. And we can use assert that as well. We can assert that value. Here I'm asserting whether my locator, this is my locator, and I'm passing my locator to assert that method. If you see, if you observe, assert that is taking, right. So assert that there are three overloaded methods. The first assert that is taking page locator, sorry, page object. And the second assert that is taking the locator object, and the third assert that is taking API response object. But for time being, we are using the second method, which is taking the locator. So you would like to pass no edit field locator here. Now on this method, we have n number of asserting options. Now here we would like to assert that it is having the whether it is disabled or not. So I can directly check whether it is disabled. That's it. Now this line is gonna check whether the field, the locator is disabled or not. Let's run this code. If you observe here, we have is disabled value as 2. So this is how we can check whether the locator is disabled or not in Playwright. Now let us maximize the browser window for a while. So how to maximize the browser window? And here in the browser context, here is a new context. So inside browser context, you can pass new context options. So you can create a separate object or directly you can pass it here. And then there is something called a set viewport size. So I'm gonna give 1920 and 1080 as the size of the window. And then here after set channel, I'm gonna use set arguments. So inside the argument, I'm gonna pass an argument. So it accepts a list of arguments, but I'm gonna send only one argument. But I'm gonna create a list of arguments. And I'm gonna pass a value called start maximized. That's what happens. Just use start or let us put it in the line. And let's import this list. And then hyphen start, I have to just give hyphen maximize. Here it should be the brackets, it's not a curly braces. Yeah. So here I'm using an option called set arguments and start maximized. And I'm setting my size of my window as 1920 and 1080. That's it. Now here we are good with option 5 as well, so scenario 5 as well. Now here let's check with, let's look into option 6. So let's look into scenario 6. Here now scenario 6, you have to confirm whether this text field is read only or not. To confirm this text field is read only or not. So we can confirm this using, we have a method called isEditable. Now we have a read only, is our free name, and is editable. we have a method called isEditable, which is going to check whether my field is editable or not. Let's enter the console. Let me use the same code which is present in line 54. Is editable, and here we can check whether it is editable or not. Editable. Similarly, I can assert this locator as well using assert that, and I'm gonna pass. So here we should not pass now if we pass. What is the locator name? Locator name is read only field. Right. So here we should pass the read only field, and then we're checking is editable or not. Let's have to wait 1 second. Let's wait for that's fine. Right. Let's run this code. If you observe, this is what the window size is. So we did set it to 1080. It's going to take some time. Okay, it failed for some reason. Let's look in the code. Okay. Okay. Now, if you observe here, we have an issue. There's an issue here. It's failing, saying that here if it is failing line number 59. Here is line number 59. It is failing, asking that instructor resolved unexpected value false. So here it is checking for is editable or not. But we know that it is not editable. Right now, the last field is not editable. It is just a read only. But how to check it is not editable? Now you can chain a method called here not. So here we would like to assert that it is not editable. So instead of is editable, we can chain it using a method called not. And then now let's run the code again. Now should pass. If you observe the console, our code got executed perfectly. Finally, it is saying that is it editable or not? No, it is not editable. Is it disabled? Yes, it is disabled. So this is how we interact with the input fields in Playwright. So these are the basic actions that are present in Playwright to interact with the input fields. In our next lecture, in our next session, we will discuss about buttons, how to get coordinates of a button, and how to get the color of a button, how to get height and width of a button, and how to click and hold a button. So we now look into all these things in our next session. Thank you guys. Please like and subscribe to this channel, and please share the video if you like the content here. Thank you and have a nice day.